Hi, everybody. We're glad that you all cleared your schedules so you can join our webinar about email design and tips and tricks. A few months ago, we organized a webinar about copywriting for email. And if you didn't join us, you don't have to worry. You can always rewatch the recording on our blog or on our website. Today, we would like to continue discussing this. Besides the copy of an email, the design is also very important, because you would like to transfer a message, and above all, you want people to click on your email. So we assume that you too prefer to read an email with a nice layout, with photos that draw your attention, etc. Well, you don't have to be a designer to put a strong design together. That's why we today will show you how your design elements can contribute to conversions and how you can put these elements in your email. We will also show you a lot of practices, good practices, tips, and examples. So I advise you all to grab some pen and paper and take notes.
Before we start, just a quick introduction. I'm Michelle. I'm business and product lead at Flexmail. I'm responsible for the marketing and product development of Flexmail, and I'll host this webinar along with Feraye. She's a trainee here at Flexmail and supports the marketing team, and today she'll be supporting me during this webinar too. So put away everything that can distract you. Put away your phone, close all other tabs, close your mailbox, because all those things won't go away. They'll be there once this webinar is over. So the more focused you are during this webinar, the more practical tips you'll get out of it.
So what is email design actually? So let's get started right away. When I say email design, what comes to your mind? What are you all thinking about? Like, you can respond in the chat box at the right side of your screen. And I'm wondering, what do you think of when I say email design? Well, email design could be the choosing of the right image, or the use of a very good title and subtitle of CTAs that could draw your attentions. Maybe you would like to use your branding colors in your emails, or provide white spaces, or making a special design for mobile readers. That all can contribute to your email design. So to give a definition of the word, email design is the process of strategically designing an email that resonates with your target group, or with other words, that will be liked by your target group. So that results in being read and stimulates your readers and target group to take action. So to adapt the visual part of your emails to make your message stand out and make it more attractive to your readers. Nobody would like to read an ugly mail, but what a beautiful or nice email is depends on your personal taste, of course. Well, there are a lot of elements that will aesthetically enhance your mails and generate more clicks. We will come across those elements during this webinar. For example, colors, white space, typography, images, and a lot of things that I summed up in the previous slide too.
Before you start designing and adding text, images, buttons, it's important to determine the goal of your message. All the rest will be aligned with that goal. First of all, you concentrate on what your contacts want to achieve and how you can meet their expectations or their desires. We discussed this more profoundly in our recording of our webinar about copywriting. I'll quickly share a link of that as well if you want to revisit that webinar or that recording. So what is mentioned in your email determines for a big part how you want to build your design and what exactly you want to highlight. And once you determined that your target, you will have to decide what kind of email campaign you want to set up. Email marketing is, of course, a lot more than just sending newsletters, and there are several kinds of emails that you could send. Newsletters, welcome emails, promotional emails, update emails, things like invites, up or cross-sell emails, themed mailings like Christmas or Valentine's Day or some other seasonal stuff, co-marketing emails, As you can see, this list is very long, and you all design them differently. While a transactional email is more brief and to the point because you're just sending confirmation, a newsletter can be very long, artistic, and complex. So email is a powerful tool which allows you to reach your contacts on a personal level, and it's also a good way to build a connection. I don't know if you know this, but it's proven that people click more often on a link in an email than on a message on LinkedIn or a tweet. But unfortunately, the power of your email as well as the attention of your reader weakens when your mail doesn't have a good structure. And layout has a very crucial role in this. Your layout is the backbone of every design and determines the flow of your content and the order in which your readers absorb information. So during this presentation, we'll first focus on each element individually, like the call to action, subtitles, the colors and stuff like that. And then we'll talk a bit more about the composition of those different elements together. So an effective design with a good structured layout attracts the attention, directs the attention, and most importantly, motivates your readers to positively react to call to actions. So a boring block of text is very easily ignored by your readers, while a creative design shifts the gaze to where you want it to go. And that's the purpose of your layout.
The first element we will look at is the use of color in your layout. Research has shown that colors increase the recognizability by 80 to 90%, and the consumers form their opinion about a certain product based on the colors you use. So don't take this lightly. Always use your branding throughout your marketing mails. So within 3 seconds, it should be clear who sent this mail. This will create trust with your contacts, and they will recognize your mails immediately. We will use Flexmail as an example. I'm sure you've noticed that we work with 2 primary colors, so you can find these on our website, social media, even in invites and mails regarding this webinar. And we also use 2 colors in our own email marketing. You can find this on our website, social media, and even in the invitations and mails of this webinar. You can use your corporate colors in several ways. Make a distinction between different subjects by using color blocks. You can also use it to highlight an important part of your mail and really make it stand out. Or always use the same colors for the header and the footer, so the focus immediately shifts to the main text. Here you can see an example of a brand that uses the color of their shoes in their mail. So you can see in the beginning that it's blue and it's going on to another color.
There are more than 250 million people who are visually impaired around the world, and another 11 billion people are near vision impaired because they need glasses but don't have them. So in addition to impaired vision, other conditions such as color blindness also affects your audience's ability to engage with your message. And that's something that you need to be aware of and adapt your colors to. Even color blindness or partial color blindness affects 1 in 12 men and 1 in 200 women worldwide. So also in your audience. Most people suffer from red or green color blindness, and according to WebAIM, improving color contrast helps those struggling with that shortcoming. So let's take a look at a couple of examples. If that yellow text at the bottom had been on a white background, you couldn't even read it. So although the quality, even if they are not visually impaired, the quality of your reader's screen also plays a big role in this. So always be aware of it. Even if your customers don't suffer from color blindness, you don't want to push them to make an extra effort to read your message. So what can you watch out for? Make sure your texts are large enough so that they are always legible and easily legible. Don't just give your links a different color, but also make sure to underline them. This way they are immediately recognizable as a link, and only use that underlinement to highlight links. And you don't have to do that with real buttons, of course. Provide sufficient contrast by placing sufficiently dark texts on a sufficiently light background and vice versa, and stay away from medium to light gray text on a white background. Dark gray is, however, possible. And then for buttons, white text on a colored background is usually the easiest to read. And also white space plays a role in this, but we'll get back to white space later on.
With the CTA in your message, you want your contacts to click on it as much as possible. And you can achieve this by making the button stand out. And what better way to do this than by choosing a striking color that pops and stands out? You can use the most striking color from your most important call to action, and that is ultimately the direction you want to point your reader to. Don't use that same color for other design elements, because then your CTA will be less powerful. It's best to give a secondary call to action another color. Besides, you should use that recognizability in the underlying landing pages. When contacts click on your CTA, that's how you reassure them that they ended up in the right place and that your mail was indeed reliable. Don't make your messages look like a coloring book, though. If you use too many colors, it's possible that the attention of your reader will wander and they won't see the essence of your message anymore. So only use primary colors and limit yourself to a maximum of 3 different ones. Here you see some examples of use of color in emails. Dare to choose something different from while to while. So here a dark background is used, and the different movies were divided in gray blocks. So it's not necessary to always use bright colors. This example shows that it also works perfectly with black and gray.
Do note that in this specific example, there are no real call to actions. There's a subtle sticky button on the images or a play button on the images. You can click on the titles. They've done this because there's a lot of content in this email, and by doing or not including the call to actions, the different parts and different articles remain small and compact, and you can easily scroll through them. Sorry, but you should also ask yourself if it's clear enough for the reader where they have to click. You can test this through A/B testing with an alternative design with real buttons or bigger play buttons on the images. If you would go for bigger play buttons on the images, your image itself would be less visible and less readable, of course. So those are things that you need to be aware of. Is it clear for my audience what they should be or what I expect them to do next?
Here you can see a beautiful example of HEMA. They have really recognizable company colors, and they also use them in their mails. This immediately causes you to recognize that this is an email from HEMA, even without their logo on it or without any images they used. And in this example from Salesforce, you see that they used color blocks and CTA buttons who clearly stand out from the background, so they are noticed immediately. Those slanted images there on the right side, they are very nice, but they require some Photoshop skills outside of your email design software, so keep that in mind.
So we want to dig deeper into why typefaces and fonts are important. And the clue here is, of course, readability and scannability of your email. So the biggest part of your email consists of text. So your font has a big influence on the success of your campaign. And it is proven that 70% of your contacts delete an email within 3 seconds when it's not properly formatted. So this means that your font, the font that you choose, needs to be readable and scannable. And you want to make a good impression, and you want your content to stand out. So how do you do that? Just like every color, a font has its own style and character when you decide to use it. A certain font has its own impression or emotion even that goes along with it. And thus there are several font families or main types of fonts that all evoke different emotions or impressions that we'll get into. So let's just discuss the 2 most important types, which are serif and sans-serif fonts. We only discuss these types because we recommend choosing between these 2 for the web. So serif letters are scripted. In other words, they have a stripe at the end of the letter, as you can see in this example, like the word TV. Times New Roman is probably the most recognizable font in this group. And these kinds of fonts exude a certain familiarity, tradition, and respect. And often they're used for older brands or brands who would like to appear to have existed for decades to win trust. Sometimes it's a bit risky to use them in an email because the pixels can make the serifs, so the little dashes, a bit unclear. They're mostly used in long texts, like in newspapers or books, because they have a calm look about them. And by using them, you create a more traditional atmosphere. They're also quite classic and elegant. Sans-Serif letters, however, don't have those little stripes, as you can see in the example of TV here, and therefore they're also called unscripted. Examples are Helvetica or Calibri. These kinds of fonts have a modern look that is simple, sleek, and clear or bright, and they're also very, very readable. They give a reliable feeling as well and a stable impression, but they often appear to be very smooth, minimalistic, and people regard them as friendly or accessible. So for digital text, this type of font is ideal because there are no risks concerning the pixels. So slowly but surely, this kind of font is also used more frequently because of its sleek and modern look.
But how can you choose the best font that fits your company? You can choose a fitting font according to these 4 characteristics. First, we have the readability, then the brightness, if it's psychologically fitting and fitting to your brand and corporate identity. So this may be even the most important aspect of a font, the readability. If your font is not easy to read, your mails can simply not be read. And if they're not being read, then you obviously can't expect conversions. Clear and sleek fonts with precise line work best in emails. So these are the sans-serif fonts Michelle just told. And so no thin strokes and curls at the end. And it's also better to avoid very thin or light lines. Bigger fonts work better than small ones. Enlarge your font by 2 points than you would normally do. So make sure that the thickness is right without having to make it bold. And try to set a line spacing of 5.15 points. So this all contributes to the brightness of your font. Here you can see clearly in the example what I mean. They used a very small font and it's not very readable. Fonts, as mentioned earlier, certain fonts can evoke several emotions. So make sure that the font you choose fits the feeling you're trying to convey with your content, but it should also fit in with the target of your content. So, for example, when selling something, it's better to appear reliable and credible. Fitting to your brand and corporate identity, well, that way you remain consistent and recognizable. Does your brand have a classic style? Then it's not fitting to choose a super modern font and vice versa. If you have a tech company, then a rustic or very formal font won't feel natural. It's all about what feels right within your organization and be consistent with it. Is it possible to use the same font on your website as on your socials? Then you should definitely go for it.
Once you've made a decision, you need to take into account some other things as well. You can use different fonts to distinguish titles and paragraphs, and it's best to use a font from the same category, so sans-serif or serif fonts, but limit yourself to maximum 3 different fonts. Again, less is more. For titles, it's important that you distinguish yourself by making them bigger and bolder. Typography should enhance your text. It shouldn't overpower other things. So especially if it's about your call to action, for example, try to aim for a mix that stands out and is clearly visible and readable. And finally, we would also like to add that a lot of fonts simply are not email or even web friendly. For example, creative and decorative fonts that are written almost, these are not displayed automatically in all different email clients. So if you would still like to use that kind of font, the only option that you have is to add that font to your images. But always keep in mind how readable is it, even if those images aren't downloaded. So in this email from Net-a-Porter, you can see very clearly what we mean by a written font, which is in this case not very readable. And those are the different titles for the different products in this email. They are of a graceful written font that they use for their subtitles, but it's often not supported, and there's a very good chance that these titles are actually images. But keep in mind, what if the images are not shown by default, as I said earlier? Then there are no titles to read here. It's very important to also add that text as alt text to your image. But also the bottom call to action is a full-length image in this email. That means that if the images are not shown, nothing can be read here. The entire message will be lost. So the text on the image is actually not a special font. They could have easily just added that text as a text element in the email, and even the button could have been an actual button instead of an image, just to improve the readability, basically.
That's why in your Flexmail account, you can only use fonts that are supported in every email client. And here's the list of them, each in their own font, as you can see. And every email client has its own default font. So when you use a font that is not recognized by the client, it will automatically be changed to the fallback. For the most frequently used clients, these are Times New Roman for Microsoft Outlook, Arial for Gmail, and Helvetica for Apple Mail.
The next element that we find really important is white space, and it's like air. It's necessary for your design to breathe. White space divides your text in bite-sized pieces and shows clearly where one part ends and where the other one starts. It provides rest, and it makes it easier to scan the text. It can also improve even the readability of your campaign. So even when you use more line spacing, it can make your text more clear. So it's great to provide rest in your text. Let's look at this example. It's just an article. But you can see that there is a lot more white space on the right side for the titles, for the images, for the different columns. It creates more structure. It lets the text breathe, and it makes it look a lot more interesting too. So if you want a certain phrase or a quote to stand out, definitely use white space around that. White spaces let your text breathe. It shows your readers where a part ends and where the next one begins, and creates order. White space can make your call to action stand out when you use it correctly as well. If you have a look at this example, in the first example, there's no white space used around the buttons, but on the right side, if you add white space around the buttons, the images, and you structure those columns differently as well, your message could look a lot more clear. It's a lot more calm, and the call to action stand out a lot more. So the visibility of all different elements has increased. The buttons stand out immediately in the titles as well. It invites you a lot more to further click on those different buttons.
So there are two kinds of white spaces, actually. So you have the active and the passive one. Active white space is an intentionally placed space to highlight different parts and draw attention to it. Passive, on the other hand, is the space around the message as well as the empty parts within the content. So here's a good example of active and passive white space. The red blocks are the active white spaces, whereas the green blocks are the passive ones.
Next, we also want to talk about titles, of course, which are really important. And it's not just about copy here either. So let's get straight to the point. Basically, the majority of your contacts will scan your emails instead of read them completely. And that's why titles are so important. By dividing your content in titles and perhaps even subtitles, you make it a lot easier for them. A good title stands out. It excites and it lingers in your readers' minds. A good title can also persuade them to really read further on and possibly even take action by clicking on a link. So with titles and subtitles, you actually take them by the hand and guide them via a path through your text to where you want them to be. So it's recommended that you lay out these titles with a striking color or a different font, or even put them in bold compared to your regular text. here as well, white space creates more visibility and a better readability. And we'll show you some different examples of that as well.
In the example of the brand Dossier, the titles on their own already give answer to the question, where to spray perfume. So by only scanning and reading the titles, you already get pretty much all the information they want to share. And design-wise, the titles are big and bold and provided with sufficient white space around it. So the titles always have the same style, which makes it very clear as a whole. Another good example is from the brand Rothy's. They make shoes and handbags from sustainable materials like water bottles. Of course, the image already makes it very clear, but the titles clearly show what is still to come. So there's more explanation and even a look behind the scenes. And at the end, you can choose from several of their favorite products. The information mail of Delta is, of course, a more serious example. So here, a lot of information needs to be shared, and that also should be understood immediately. You first scan the title, then the subtitle, and by doing that, you already have all the information you need. Is it important to you? Did it catch your attention? Well, then you will read on. And don't forget, strong titles are the result of a good layout and the right words. For the best combination, you should also check our copywriting webinar.
With the rise of spam filters, who scanned all text more carefully, spammers need to be more creative with their content. And they took a diversion and tried to bypass those spam filters by putting all their content in images. But this method was not completely waterproof because all filters received a big update, so they can now also block images as well. And those filters also make it more difficult for us when we are designing a regular email. But fortunately, we'll teach you how to do better. We'll start with an example of the newsletter of Stark. They offer a tool to make software more user-friendly. Once you start adding images and even call to actions to that design, it becomes a lot more structured and people know where to look. So for the dimensions, it's important to keep a width of 600 to 700 pixels maximum. And this is also the width you should keep for your entire message. If you use bigger images, it's harder to show these responsively on mobile screens, but your readers often also won't bother to continuously scroll horizontally in their Outlook, for example, to read your email in the preview pane. For the quality, you want to choose an image of good quality. Nothing is as annoying as a blurry image or an unclear text on your image. So JPEG images are fine for pictures, but if you want to include texts on the image, that will result in a lower quality. So then you can best use PNG images when you have text on that image or when you have used several layers in the design. So if it needs to really be very crisp, then it's better to switch to PNG.
For a big part, images contribute to a visual representation of your mail. So they break the monotony and give your mail a light-hearted tone. A visual aid makes your text more enjoyable and also makes it easier to remember words. And that's why it's also important to think about which image you want to use. Choose functional images who support your text. An image that has nothing to do with your message in your mail is not really an added value for your mail. And in this example, the images show you what to expect very well, and they also add to the atmosphere. Also play with the viewing direction. So in this example, the eye catches the product immediately because the man on the image is pointing to it. Subconsciously, you will start looking at the device. And do you want to focus your contact's attention to a CTA button, for example? Then use some visual hints. That can be a pointing finger, like in this example, but you can also use arrows, lines, or even a person who's looking in a certain direction. People are attracted by faces. So in this example with heat map tracking, you'll see a nice example of a visual hint with a face that's looking towards something. The heat map tracking clearly shows where people are looking in both at in both examples. So the image in which the baby is looking forward makes you look at the baby's face. The image in which the baby is looking at the text makes you automatically look at the text because you're following the face.
Besides just what's on the image, first and foremost, you should also keep in mind that not every email client will display those images immediately. This can lead to problems with your layout. So definitely don't use images for essential elements like titles or call to actions. And make sure you have a good alt text for every image in the email. It's crucial that this alt text is specifically describing what exactly is shown on your image. For example, if you're sending a campaign for Valentine's Day and in your email there's an image of red roses, then your alt text should be red roses. If you have text on your image, then your alt text should include that specific text, so your contacts are still able to read what will be in your design. And thanks to these alt texts, your contacts will still get an idea of what was shown on the image, and maybe they will download images faster if that has piqued their curiosity. But just to be sure, also test your design without the images. That way you're sure that the overall picture still makes sense. Let's have a look at this example, which on first impression looks really nice. If we have a look at this email without the images displayed, that will look like this. On the right, of course. This gives your readers no other incentive whatsoever to make an effort and download those images. So we would never advise a style of email like this. So you want to keep a balance between the different texts and images, and don't put your text and call to action in an image. So, by the way, if you're in the address book of your receiver, in most cases, your images will be displayed automatically. So it pays off to set up email authentication and be consistent in the choice of your sender details and sender email address. To make sure that you don't really need even the alt text, and that your email is displayed right away with all the images enabled. So in the example that we just shown, you clearly see that an alt text can be important, and that a message with only images is definitely not recommended, of course. And for that exact reason, we didn't put the option to use an image for your background in our drag and drop builder either. Because a lot of email clients don't support background images, and it can entirely change the whole layout of your message if those images aren't downloaded by your reader.
Now, do you remember the first example about an email with or without images? A message with images looks attractive, but depending on the type of email you want to send, it can also work perfectly without. Take, for example, an update mail. In this format, it's usually only one article that's written to inform the receiver about a certain change or innovation. And that's why these kind of mails are relatively short, and usually it's not even necessary to use an image. Or what about this announcement? Here there are, besides the logo, no images used, but in this case, it's not even really necessary. Even in a newsletter, it can sometimes work not to use any images, but also pay attention to the titles and the white space they have used. In this example, the titles are clickable as well. So you can ask yourself if that's clear for the reader, especially when all the way at the bottom we do see a call to action all of a sudden. Design and possibly style is absolutely important, but it must not be at the expense of clarity. And what your reader doesn't understand, he cannot click on. It is simply a fact that spam filters hate mails that exclusively consist of images, or mails that are crammed with images. When your email design doesn't have a good ratio between text and image, your message will probably end up in the spam folder, and all your efforts will have been for nothing. So that's why it's of the utmost importance that your body informs your reader sufficiently about the target of your mail, even when the images are blocked, and you can still transfer your message. As mentioned earlier, describing alt text is crucial, but when your images aren't visible, these alt texts will give your reader an idea about what was originally shown. How you can handle this? It's important that your images form a coherent whole with your text. So it's important, as well as Well, yeah, so what's important as well is that your images support your text and not the other way around. So it's best to use a composition with an 80% text to 20% image ratio. 80% should consist of text, so try to deliver as much as content as possible so it will remain interesting, even without images. But we cannot guarantee you that with using this ratio, your mail will never end up in the spam folder. Every spam filter has its own criteria, but we will talk more about that later.
So a few examples again. We already talked about the colors that you use in your message, and keep those colors in mind when choosing the different images. Here you'll see a nice example of an image that fits seamlessly with the company colors, and that really blends together. In our own emails, we also use the same primary colors for our images, but the pink color is mainly used to make the call to action stand out. So even with images, it's really important to keep your own branding in mind and to make sure that your message is nice and coherent as a whole.
So I don't think we have to explain it anymore, but CTA is the heart of your mail. So although some campaigns are solely for fun, other email campaigns are set up to market something or to inform about a product, a service, an event, a news. And in those cases, everything revolves around that one button, your CTA. You're calling your clients to take action. As an email marketer, you want your readers to buy those products, subscribe themselves on your services, or register for events, for example. And the only way to achieve that is to guide them from their inbox to your landing page. Sending great content and hoping that your customers will remember you is not enough. They have to take action immediately, and CTAs are the best way of doing that. Michelle, you're muted. We don't hear you.
Sorry, thanks. So before we continue with the layout of your call to actions, we first want to talk a bit more about the different types of links that you can use, basically. And that difference is what we call emotional or functional links. So what is the difference and how do they contribute to conversions? Emotional links are actually the call to actions that we talk about. And they're also called the primary call to action. So those are the buttons in the body of your email, those that generate curiosity and excitement for your readers. You use those emotional links to build expectations and thus emotions, but they will be fulfilled by your button. And they're therefore usually very prominent in your design. They're strategically written and placed links that prompt the user to take action. As you would expect from those emotional links, so the call to actions, more of those clicks contribute to conversion. So the majority of the clicks in your email, mainly 78%, is generated by those emotional links. And that's also the reason why we as marketers put in the most effort in those links, but in the copy and the design, place them on a strategic place to ensure that the contact will find this relevant information. So those emotional links should stand out and should make it clear what is to be expected from your reader. For the functional links, those are links like a website navigation at the top of your email, a header or a company logo. They're essentially more practical links that give your readers direct access to where they want to be. If I click on a logo, I expect to be redirected to your homepage. So it's every link basically that brings your reader to you by an anchor link, like click here to read more about a specific topic, or the links on your social media icons, or a clickable logo at the top of your page or message. But the navigation is a really good example of that as well. They have a very clear purpose, those functional links, and have a clear result. And there's a high level of expectation involved with your reader as well, because your contact knows if I click here, this will happen. Functional links also contribute to your conversion. You should always include them because then those readers are looking for something very specific. An analysis shows that only 22% of all links in your email or all clicks in your email are generated by these functional links. So these links still lead to an average of more than 30% of the turnover of an average email campaign. So let's look at an example. In this example of uncommon goods, you can see both emotional and functional links at work. We see call to action there, but we also see a navigation at the top of the email. And here we can immediately see clear difference. The functional links are, for example, the menu at the top of the email and the logo. If I click on gifts, it's very clear that I am looking for a gift. And then the chance that I will buy something as a gift on your website is a lot higher, even when the specific products that are in the email don't really interest me at first glance.
A good layout leads your reader to speak to the CTA. So a CTA should stand out. You want your CTA to catch the eye of your reader and don't let it go. But how do you do that? First of all, you have to determine the target of your CTA. What do you expect? What do your contacts expect from you? What action should they take? How will they do that? And perhaps the most important one, why would they do that? Every CTA has to be an added value for your readers. And even when you don't measure it literally, they have to receive something in return for their valuable time when they click on your CTA. Of course, there are two factors that play a big role in this, namely the language and the design of your CTA in comparison with the rest of your email. For what concerns copy, the message has to be clear. Try to be creative and try to come up with something else than a click here and read more. These examples are not really inspiring. Show your contacts what a click will give them. For example, download your personal report or get your free products. And here we have, as mentioned earlier, given an interesting webinar about a few months ago. You can always rewatch it on our website. You can also find more tips about the call to actions in one of our recent blog articles. Today, we want to teach you something about the design of your CTAs, where to put them, and what you have to keep in mind. A CTA should stand out from the rest of your email, so it should be certainly bigger than your regular text. Take the mobile readers into account. More and more readers switch to mobile. As of today, 45% of the opens happens via a mobile device. This also has a big influence on your CTA. The physical size of your button is more important than ever, because while clicking on a link with your mouse on your desktop, it gives a very precise control. Touching a CTA with your thumb, on the other hand, can be very frustrating when these are too small or too close next to each other. So if you make it too small, you generate irritation, and if it's too big, you ruin your entire design. Actually, your CTAs have to be big enough, so even big thumbs can touch them easily. Apple advises to set the touching targets to a minimal of 44x44 points. And we also recommend this as a good starting point when designing a CTA. On a mobile device, it's also a good idea to center the call to actions. That way, left and right-handed people can operate their phone and your mail with one hand.
For your call to actions, the use of sufficient white space is also very important. You have to make it as easy as possible for your readers to click on your call to action. So you shouldn't only make them big enough, but you should also place enough white space around them, as well as sufficient space within your buttons, around the text, basically. So by leaving enough white space around your button, it will become easier to find your call to action in your email. And furthermore, enough white space also make sure that your readers don't get frustrated when they try to click on the link. So I think you already know how annoying it is to click on a link, but due to lack of space to end up on another link and on another web page as well. Additionally, it's best to provide enough white space within your button around your text. So this mainly facilitates readability and makes a call to action stand out even more, and what again results in more clicks. That's why we recommend to provide at least 10 pixels of white space within the button around the text. So in this specific example of the brand house, you can see that there's a lot of space in and around the buttons. You can't really miss them, and not even with your thumb on your smartphone. There's enough distance between the text and the buttons, and the same distance is maintained both above and below the button. They therefore don't use text link, and you can immediately know where to click, namely on the button itself.
Your CTA should be more striking than the rest of your mail. So the perfect way to do this is with color. We have already told more about this in the segment of use of color, but let's make it clear. Use of color is always a perfect way to create contrast. Vivid colors are the best way to catch the eye. Even when you use toned down colors in your palette, it's best to create a contrast for your button. Here you can see an example. Which one of the two will attract your attention more quickly in the bigger picture? I think it's the blue one. Not every CTA has to be a big red button though, or in this case, a big blue button, but it has to stand out from your brand colors and the content of your page. Try colors that contrast the colors of your brand, or place text links between a lot of white space to put them in the spotlight. Border radius, you're wondering? Well, we'll discuss CTA buttons with rounded edges. With the radius option, it's possible to round the corners of a button. A lot of marketeers apply this to better fit the CTA in its entire message, along with other branding elements in the corporate identity. So here you can see a difference between CTAs with or without rounded corners. But we explain this because you need to know that not every email client supports this. For example, Outlook. So keep in mind that when choosing rounded edges, your buttons will be there. Despite your settings, they will still be shown as a square though. So here you can see a short mail from content with a CTA button with rounded corners. Looks very aesthetic. It will look like this in the most of the email clients. But sadly, it could be that the CTA will come out like this in Outlook. So keep that in mind.
So how many is too many buttons in your email? That's an eternal discussion between designers and marketeers as well. So we see a lot of emails coming through that put in a dozen of call to actions on the assumption that at least one of them is relevant for the customer. However, it's better to focus on one or two call to actions that are an added value for your customers. So we recommend not to use too many call to actions in one email, because the less actions contacts have to take, the clearer it is for them what they actually have to do or what you expect them to do there. That way you avoid over choice and stress or choice paralysis, and you make your target clear immediately. For every target, it's best to send a separate email that is very focused and only contains call to actions that serve that specific purpose. So let's have a look at an example. Here you can see two emails from Apple. One in which they have used a lot of call to actions on the left, and another one on the right in which they focus mainly on only one call to action. Here they put all the focus on only one product, a new iPhone, whereas in the other email they showcase all of their different types of products and they put them in the spotlight. So it's these emails have very different goals, and the email on the right is for a product launch, for a new product that you really want to make the center of your design, of course. So with retailers, it happens more often that they place multiple call to actions in their emails, but that's a choice.
So we have just discussed all the design elements individually, but now the goal is to structure all these elements in your design, determining a composition. By composition, we mean the structure and ordering of the design. So to communicate well visually, knowledge of and practical insight into composition is extremely important. But before you place elements in your mail, you will therefore first have to decide how many topics or articles you want to place in your mail. So do you choose one topic or do you want to share several? And how many topics do you put in one mail? The possibilities are endless. So if you choose to place multiple articles in your mail at the same time, instead of focusing on one topic, we recommend that you go for a maximum of 5 topics. Oh no. Go right ahead. For a maximum of 5 topics. You can, of course, test for yourself what works best for you. Maybe 6 articles are just about sufficient, or you already have enough with 4. But keep in mind, mails that are too long are not read at the bottom, and Gmail cuts too long mails into pieces. But of course, to keep it interesting, it's better to go for a few topics as possible and to spread your content over several emails. Of course, it would be a waste of all your effort if the readers just scrolled without clicking anywhere. So to make your choices easier, we briefly summarize the advantages and disadvantages of both structures. So when you choose for one topic per email, your purpose is very clear. So all the elements focus towards one purpose, and you have a higher frequency because you mail more often. So you stay on top of mind of your readers. But on the other hand, it will be a hit or miss. So what if the topic isn't relevant to your reader? You need to segment correctly in order to reach the right target group and to have a hit. Although when you choose for multiple topics per mail, you will have several topics that will stand out. So one topic can outshine the other one, but there will always be something for everyone. Although keep in mind that the attention weakens, the attention will be divided between several topics. So your contact will start to make a value judgment. Which one should I read first? Which one shouldn't I read? You also need to pay more attention to your layout because a visual distinction will be needed. You need to have different background colors for different articles, maybe insert subtitles. You really need to put some thought to that.
So email design is not only about a fancy and hip design, but above all, about functionality and simplicity. So if it is therefore very important that you put your content, your images, and other design elements in a clear visual hierarchy. This means structuring everything in such a way that you draw attention to the most important elements, but to do that step by step too. So this allows your readers to easily scan and understand the information. And we've already mentioned this in the section on titles. It is therefore you should apply it to all design elements, basically. You inform your readers about which information specifically is important and less important. And by prioritizing your information, you give a lot more context. So let's talk about some specific models that you can use.
You have undoubtedly heard of this composition model, and as it says, you put your elements in your mail in such a way that it looks like an inverted pyramid. This is mainly used for emails in which only one topic is discussed, and all the attention should go to that one topic. So just think of a product, a promotion, or a news that you really want to promote. In this structure, attention is drawn with an eye-catching image, then an expectation is created based on a concise, clear title and a copy that further supports the message, after which your readers are led to the call to action button that clearly shows what action needs to be taken. The main advantage of this model is that it's very functional and the reader can scan it really quickly or read if they want to spend time to it. In this example of Wealthsimple, you can see exactly what we mean. Wealthsimple is an online investment management service that is aimed at millennials. And in this mail, they introduced their new service portfolio review. So first you have a large image on which someone is reading something, a portfolio perhaps, a clear title and a clear CTA. Here it's immediately made clear what will happen when you click on the CTA. You will schedule a review. In this example, on the other hand, we see a different visual approach to the inverted pyramid model. So here they start with a catchy headline, then an image, and so on to be the CTA. This is also a possibility. The buttons, however, here run across the full width of the mail, and this is not such a good idea. Okay, if your content is nicely centered and equally wide on the page, but you do want your button to be immediately recognizable as a button, and not as a title bar or something like that. So it's therefore best to make the button smaller.
The next structure that we would like to discuss is a zigzag model, and the name says it here as well. using different blocks, which alternately consist of images and text, you try to guide your readers step by step through your email. So your readers are zigzagging through your email. This model comes in very handy when you want to mention multiple topics and want to display them in a very simple way. Yet another plus is that it visually draws the eye and leaves you wanting more. So let's have a look at some examples here as well. This is a very nice and playful and good example of Sesame Place. You first encounter an inverted pyramid model at the top of the email, and then they continue on to the zigzag model. In this case, you get all the information, the reasons here in a very playful way, and it also works extremely well with the colors, the titles, and the white space. At the end, they even ask which ones caught your eye, and they can ask you that because that certainly happens. Do note that if you use the zigzag model, those blocks may be displayed differently on a desktop and on a mobile version. In the mobile version, those will cascade above and below each other. And the images on a smartphone, of course, are a lot smaller. So they cannot make all content, we cannot make all content equally visible in width, basically. So when you choose Zigzag Structure in our drag and drop builder, you may have noticed that we immediately show you what this structure will look like on a mobile screen, and you can choose yourself whether you want to put either the image or the text at the top of the mobile design.
Another frequently used structure is the hybrid layout. This is often used if you want to communicate multiple topics. Here, however, you are going to make a distinction between primary and secondary information. So you display your primary topic at the top and the secondary topics are placed in different columns below. This model is ideal for you if you want to get your readers to click on the multiple CTAs. And in this example, you can also see that the inverted pyramid method is often used at the top of for the primary topic. So here you see the primary topic at the top and the rest is listed below. In this example below, we can see that they have mixed multiple types. So Belroy opts for a hybrid design in which the attention is first drawn with a photo and a title. So that's an inverted pyramid. And then if we scroll further down, we see a zigzag with different CTAs.
So now that you know more about the different possible structures and compositions of your emails, we would like to give you one handy tip as well. To test whether you are on the right track, you can use the so-called Squint Test. So take some distance from your screen and make sure that the design of your email is fully visible. Squint at your screen, maybe not with most of your colleagues around, and that will make the image blurry. So when your attention is immediately drawn to the most important elements, which will be the image, the title, and the call to action, your visual hierarchy is correct.
To conclude, we will give you some last tips.
Keep in mind that most recipients never view your email in full screen view. That means double clicking on the email, because every email client has a so-called preview pane. So once your email is clicked, your email will open in that specific window. This will have no impact on your open rates, of course, but in Outlook, this is, depending on your personal settings, to the right side of your screen. In Gmail, you will see your complete email with at the top more information about the sender and the subject and the Gmail toolbar as well. So depending on the display, your reader will therefore only see a part of your email and then he has to scroll if he wants more. So that means that the upper part is extremely important for telling your reader what they're going to find in that email, and that needs to be clear in a matter of seconds. So if you put a large logo or a large meaningless image right there, you've partly wasted that precious space. So it is therefore best to ensure that your logo, the main title, and an ID of the contents of your email are immediately visible.
Go beyond a simple hello, Michelle, and make use of the data you have. In your Flexmail account, you can add interest to your contacts and then respond to them. You can also easily import data to process it in your copy and just do as you want to. It's what you make of it.
The email clients sometimes don't make it easy email clients don't make it easy for you either. So we want to include also a couple of tips on compatibility with tools like Outlook, for example. For example, we are specifically talking about embedding videos directly in your email. Depending on the email client that you use, your video will be displayed perfectly, or it won't be supported. So in Apple Mail, for example, that's fully supported. In Outlook, that's not supported at all. So that can be quite risky. So never just embed the email, but instead include a static image with a play icon on the image and a link to the video. Or you could add a video to your landing page, and then, sorry, your readers are indirectly led to it. But the nice thing about video in email is that links to YouTube are recognized by Gmail, so they're partially supported there. They will automatically open in a mini player at the bottom of your Gmail account in which the video can be displayed.
So the great thing about GIFs is that they support animations. They are also suitable for texts. The catch is, though, that this font only has 256 colors, so that's very few. As a result, your animations will look blurry and that may not be so clear. This format is best used when you want to use text in your image or to show illustrations. Right now, this image should have been a GIF too, but I don't understand why it's not animating like it should be, but however. Sometimes your animated GIF may not play like in this situation, but again, depending on which email client your recipient uses. So then you end up with an illustration that represents nothing. To avoid that, it's best to add important information on the first frame so that it still represents something. It can be very tempting, but avoid overusing animated GIFs. This is mainly to keep it orderly and to prevent your mail from loading slower. Applying it every now and then will make your message more powerful and will make it nicer.
We also want to briefly talk about dark mode. Dark mode is a setting that shifts an interface's color palette to display high contrast content with dark background colors and light foregrounds. So black text becomes white and white backgrounds become dark and vice versa. So ultimately, dark mode is used to minimize blue light and improve readability to reduce eye strain. So many developers are already quite familiar with dark mode as it is a popular way to view code. But dark mode is also ideal for people with photosensitivity or even those who work at night, as it is easier to read in low light environments. And you see it coming back more and more. So that's why I want to discuss that briefly as well. So many popular applications have a dark mode for the user interface, and that includes email apps now as well. And this should come as no surprise, email clients deal with dark mode in different ways, each their own different flavor, and that's where the biggest challenges come in, of course. So you want your readers to be able to read your email well in dark mode. So it's not always just the email application's user interface that switches when dark mode is enabled. Email clients can also change the appearance of the entire message. So dark mode shifts the background and the font colors of an email to light on dark. And to do that, it checks every color or background color of every element if they can find them. So dark mode doesn't usually cause any problems with plain text emails because the text is just basically black on white, which is just being inverted. But with HTML emails, where different components have different defined colors, things can get complicated. So let's have a look at an example. This email is still readable in dark mode on the right for the most part, but if you're really committed to designing and developing an ideal email experience for every subscriber, there are probably some things that you'd like to change. So what can you do about them? So just a couple of tips to optimize for dark mode, basically. You can use PNGs with transparent background for images to make sure that those are displayed completely and optimally, like your logo. But if your logo contains black text, that's not optimal, of course. You could put white borders around black elements. These are not visible in light mode, but ensure that black bars or images are clearly visible in dark mode. If you do want to go further in this, you can also add HTML clauses, but then you must build your entire email in HTML. So it's basically better to just accept that you don't have everything under control, and above all, you want your message to still get across well and be really readable. Freya, you're muted.
Sorry. So whatever you do, never lose sight of the purpose of your mail. We talked about this in the very beginning. Will your design really help people to click on your call to action? Aren't there too many distractions? Do the different parts work well together? Always start with your goal. Think about what you need for that goal and write copy that is clear and moves people to take that action. And then use your design to reinforce that message and your various text elements even more. A clear layout offers peace of mind and shows your reader exactly where they need to be, because simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication. Just like in this example, it's very simple, yet it's really colorful and really responsive.
So do make sure to conclude that every element in your email should work together. Functionality and overview always takes precedence over style and whether something is beautiful, because that is, however, in the eye of the beholder. So it especially helps you to be recognized as yourself, to create a structure and a feeling. Thank you again for attending this webinar. If you have any further questions about design or some specific problems that you may have with your own emails, you can ask us in the chat. We will also send you a link to the replay of this webinar, so you can have a look at the different examples later on if you want to. Any remaining questions left? What about the file size of emails? Any guidelines and advice on that, and how to figure out how large emails are? Well, if your design is very complex, then your HTML code will become longer and the file size of your emails will increase. But the most important element that will influence the file size of your emails are the sizes of your images. So there's no use to upload images that can be used as wallpaper, basically, because they will read that email on a computer screen. And it's also best to keep the image size low, because when people are reading your email on a smartphone, even with mobile data activated, they will not be very thankful of you to use that data to download big images that they maybe even aren't interested in. So keep in mind the file size. Also keep in mind the number of articles in your email. If you have a very large email, and that's specifically true for the file size as well, Gmail will cut your email in half, and your reader needs to click on download the rest of this email to continue reading on. And not everyone will do that. So it's in your best interest and in the best interest of your readers to keep those file sizes small, mainly by keeping your designs simple and concise and very structured, and by not including too much information. Hope that answers your question, Lawrence. No, thank you. So if there aren't any other questions, then we would like to thank you again for attending this webinar. If you have any questions later on, you can also contact us through our support team, and we'll be very happy to have a look at your email as well. Thank you so much, and have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.